spoiler alert. If anyone came to church this morning to hear words of gentle comfort, better leave now, because you're going to be disappointed. These are words of intense challenge. And I'm not going to back away from what Jesus is proclaiming. I'm going to ask you to take a deeper look at it, and then ask yourself, all right, what do I do with this? How do I live this? I want you to go back. You all have your little inserts. I want you to look at the opening prayer. Look at the column. Did you hear the words that I set the tone for this liturgy in? This is a prayer. Lord, you've taught us that without love, whatever we do is worth nothing. Part 1. Send your Spirit, pour into our hearts your greatest gift, that is love, the true bond of peace and of all virtue, without which, without love, whoever lives is accounted dead before you. Now, who came here to hear a gentle, compassionate, warm, fuzzy sermon? Raise your hand, be honest. Yes. Isn't it interesting? The 2 attorneys raised their hand. Nobody else. You can't make that up. Whenever we start talking about the reality of being and living this Christian life, and we start talking about Jesus' mandate to love, preachers tend to go all over the place. We're all guilty of that, okay? And we make a lot of mistakes along the way. But clearly, when Jesus, as a rabbi, as a teacher, and again, for those of you who have taken Bible study, you know this already, probably what we call today the Sermon on the Mount was not something Jesus did only once in one occasion. This was probably the substance of what he taught in every single village he went through his years of ministry. This was part of his message. We're told that the heart of our relationship with God and with each other has to be defined by love. And then he goes and explains what that means. He starts talking about loving God with everything that you are. He quotes from the Hebrew Scriptures. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. That's reserved to God. But the other in our life, whoever the other is, and little by little he builds this up. You must love your neighbor, whoever crosses your path. You must love those who don't love you, who take offense at you, who don't really like you. And then he says on the night before he dies, this is what love is about. Love each other as much as I would. Be willing to even offer your life for the person you love. And it builds. So what is this loving the other like? What are we supposed to be doing? How is it supposed to be lived? Well, think about this. If we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, and if you tend to pamper yourself, think of all the people God expects you to pamper. All right? If you're utterly self-absorbed and you think everything is always about you, think again that now everything's going to have to be about them. Each of them that crosses your path, whoever they are. And on the other hand, if you're a person who feels bad about yourself, if you don't like yourself, if you have issues with yourself, is that the way you are going to treat others? And is that love? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a little bit of Bible study again today, and I'm going to ask you to listen to the words you didn't hear. Stephen King is making a face. Just put on. Yeah. You listen to the words you did hear, but I want you to listen to the words you didn't hear. Again, when you go to seminary, you learn all these crazy things, none of which you ever had a chance to show off that you actually know. And I'm going to show off right now. This is totally arrogant. And that is, very often, when we listen to the word as it is proclaimed, we have an Old Testament reading, we have a reading from one of St. Paul's letters, we have a gospel passage. You all know that, okay? The experts, the liturgists, most of the time, try to make those passages roughly around the same size to create a sense of balance. So very often, they will take passages out, okay, just so to condense something, especially when they think there's repetition involved. They did that today, and I think they made a mistake. And here's my point. Take your little insert. Okay. Look at the second reading that Julian read from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. And don't look at the text. Just look at where this is taken from. What do you see? This is taken from the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verses 10 and 11, and then 16 to 23. So whatever happened to verses 12, 13, 14, and 15? Well, let me tell you what they say. I want you to hear the words we didn't hear. Okay? He's using this metaphor of being a Christian, living the Christian life, and the community itself is a temple. All right? He's using that it's a building. Okay? He says, now, these are the words of the verses that weren't there. Now, if anyone builds on a foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, the work of each builder will become visible as daylight exposes it, because it will be revealed by fire. And fire will test the kind of work that was done. And if what was built on the foundation survives, the builder will be rewarded. But if the work is burned up, the builder suffers loss. For some reason, they didn't want us to hear that. St. Paul uses this image of Christian faith, the Christian life. It's like being a temple. God's Spirit dwells within you. The new community of Jesus is supposed to be living that way. And yet, soon enough, and adolescents, young people in front row, by definition, you don't understand what it is to suffer pain and loss yet. That is the definition of being a teenager. But someday you will. Someday the building gets tested. And it will be tested by the fires of life, by the disappointments of life, by the pain, by the injustice, by the disease, by the things we have done and the things we have failed to do, the choices we make, the choices we didn't make, by what was done to us which was so unreasonable, and by the reasonable choices we should have made but we were too lazy to make them, by the sins we committed, those committed against us. Those are the things that test the foundation of who we are as a Christian. And if you build your life on the foundation, to use St. Paul's image, of wood and hay, if your faith is built on the foundation of wood and hay, the first fire that comes along, guess what? Poof! All gone. All gone. Loving those who cross your path is the great test of fire. And that is why it is so important that we hear this message over and over and over again. That we hear Jesus constantly telling us, look, if you love those who treat you well, if you love those you get along with, if you love those who politically agree with you, if you love those that you always hang out with, if you love your family, great. But big deal. Anyone can do that. Anyone should do that. But can you love those who hold you in disdain? Can you speak in confrontation with those you disagree with out of love and not out of love of confrontation? Trying to win that person back. Now, the thing about being stopped on the right-hand side, do you know where that comes from? Did Mother Lynn ever talk about what that gesture was about? Matthew talks about being hit on the right cheek. Okay? How do you hit a person on the right side of their face? You backhand. That's for right-handed people, that's how you do it. That was the ultimate insult. Okay? Especially if you were publicly going to humiliate them in a public situation. Even in that confrontation, what does Jesus say? Yeah, you can exact your revenge. You can do whatever you want. But guess what? You're going to be my disciple. I'm calling you to something greater and much more difficult. But Jesus doesn't want us to be doormats. That's not the point. The point is we stand for something greater. People honor Dr. King because of his philosophy of nonviolence. He was taught spiritually by Gandhi. Jesus was saying it all along. You know, an eye for an eye. What was the great line in the movie? An eye for an eye, you end up with two blind people. And our world is blind. If we don't stand for something different and something better and something greater because of who we are as disciples of Christ, this world is in more serious trouble for your children than you can even hope to believe. So whom do you love? Whom do you serve? Are you willing to love your neighbor as yourself? Are you willing love one another as